All right, so I'll call the meeting to order. And we'll start with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And first item is public comments. We don't have anyone from the public here. So we'll continue on to correspondence.
There are two pieces of correspondence that are both in the packets.
And I think there was another piece of correspondence Nick just told me about. It come through. Pat Probert sent Nick an email requesting research. And it went, when it was CC'd to Dan. Did you see that,
Is
or?
it my work email or my personal?
Well, let me take a look.
The two.
Yeah, it looks like your personal, Daniel Lee Carter, Gmail.
I have not had a chance to read that.
Okay.
Yesterday.
So Pat asked for 10 things to be researched by Nick. So I just want to kind of get an agreement with Dan and everyone else on the board is that, you know, Nick isn't a volunteer, he's paid by the hour. And so we can't have individual members. He doesn't work for 7 individual members, he works for the whole commission. So if you have questions that you'd like to pose.
Should I try to answer some of them before I know?
Well, let's just get the process, because Nick doesn't
Oh, I see what you're
need
saying, yeah.
7 of us sending him
It's usually
requests for information and
We discussed. I'd recommend everything go to the chair, probably.
Yeah.
And then you.
so, so when they come through me, we'll discuss the questions, and then if the commission feels appropriate, we can send them on for research. But Dan, if you want to kind of go through and address it, I mean, the other members haven't seen this.
How would you like to handle it?
It was my understanding from the beginning that we can ask him questions relative to the position of which we're appointed.
Yeah.
It shouldn't.
During the meeting. During the meeting.
No, that's not the way I understand it. The way I understand it, if I engaged in a conversation with a citizen that had question, I can ask that question and hopefully formulate an answer. I understand where you're going with it,
right?
But I don't think necessarily that every question posed to our attorney should be vetted and processed necessarily through this commission. I may be wrong.
I mean, it could be
And
that
so-
questions can be answered by other people here on the board rather than,
Well, I was
So
under,
you and I may
yeah,
have
but
the
I was
same
under the
question.
understanding that he was to assist us with any questions. And if I recall, I could read it, the template of which we were given in the formulation and the powers and authority of our appointment, lended the opportunity to ask questions of our attorney. So what my concern is that any question that someone has, if I'm correct in what you're saying, has to be vetted through the board.
May I?
go ahead.
My understanding is like yours, is that all of the questions come out on the table. It's not, one of the things to think about is that there may be 5 people with the same question. So if he gets 5 emails, it's bogged down. But you also may find out that Penny or Dan or Nick have the answer to that question verbally in a meeting where Nick is already here. The other thing is it is billable hours. And let's just do that. put that one out there. But there may be 3 or 4 people whose questions can be answered at the same time. And that's one of the things that I want to hear your questions.
Yes.
I'm not hearing them if you go directly.
Well,
to me.
my point is that some of these things, what I'm actually trying to do is to lessen the dialogue by finding out answers to questions that are relevant. And sometimes those questions are answered and there is no further dialogue or question that needs to be answered. So it can be the opposite and include with what you're
You're
what
not
you're
asking
saying.
them where the public can be a part of it either. And that's the other issue of sending a direct email to the attorney. There's no way for the public to know what that was. And everything that's asked here in public is on camera where people can watch now or later. So they may have the same question also, in which, I mean, I'm not arguing with you. I'm
Yeah,
just
I
trying to,
understand.
I'm trying to get to the point where a lot of us are going to have the same questions and we all need to work it out together and then decide what's if we may add to your question, we may refine the question,
Correct.
and then we can send it to Nick to find out if it's legal or not. But do you know
Well,
what I'm?
it's not illegal. It's not all legal questions. It's, how process occurred, things of that nature. And I understand.
So
that
there was a
has to
lot
be
of
balance.
research and it would take Nick a long time to do all that.
Well,
So, and some of the questions as Alice just mentioned, we already have the answers around the table. So we don't need to send it to our legal counsel because it's more of a research question than a legal question.
Asking them publicly, the general public probably has a lot of your same questions, so then they get to hear the answer, and I think that's.
my purpose was to gain knowledge and limit some of the dialogue that occurs here during the meetings to relevant and substantial information, but everything isn't concluded or determined at this board. It is, you're formulated or you're asked questions by the public outside of this venue, and if they're relevant from what I'm hearing, I think that they should be voiced within the commission. So, take it as you may. In regards to the cost, I think it is what it is. I agree that there's efficiencies that can be made, but
That's a minor
something
point.
shouldn't just be judged upon, especially with something that's so as important as the foundation of a charter, that we should be limited on the amount of time that an attorney would spend.
My only point is that all of us
And
need to
Joan-
work together.
Joan had a
I
point.
just wanted to agree with Alice about the public aspect of this commission. We are public
I have,
here, and I think they must keep as much public as we possibly can.
okay.
So,
And my intention is to be totally transparent with everything that I'm involved in. I have no.
None of us have seen your letters.
Right.
And I just got it a half an hour ago.
Again, my understanding was that if we had questioned, he was there as a resource
He is here
for.
as a
Not-
resource.
Not on an individual basis. So I represent the Charter Revision Commission, and I am here to answer questions, mostly legal in nature. But before those questions are posed on an individual commissioner's basis, I fully believe that there should be a consensus among the membership that those questions should be posed and spent time, money, and effort researching. Because if they're not going anywhere among the commission, then it's really no point in me diving down. I mean, quite honestly, this would take hours to respond to, and some of it is completely outside the purview of charter.
Yeah, I disagree, and I'll tell you why, because I understand what you're saying. We're being asked to make amendments to this charter, and this particular thing involves the fire commission. And all of those things that I asked were certainly relevant to the discussions that we had last week certainly near the end of the meeting. That's my point. They are, they are inclusive. They specifically had to do with things that were mentioned and discussed in this meeting, and I think they're relevant.
And I'd love to be part of that conversation.
Okay,
And I think most of the commission would too,
okay, yeah, I could read them. I'll
because
start
I'm not
with
even
my-
sure
No,
it's a
no,
good
we're-
idea.
no,
so,
we're not-
you know.
We're gonna let, Dan has a copy, because you sent a copy to Dan.
Okay,
He said he can answer most of the questions.
Yeah, a lot of the basic. The other thing, Mr. Chair, unless you want to wait until we start talking about the fire commission, which is the subject matter.
Well, I mean, it says,
Or we could,
other than, I mean, we're kind of discussing this as part of correspondence that we didn't receive.
fair enough.
and my intention was,
Well, I don't have his, I don't have, wait a minute. I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of the fire commission when all of us haven't read his letter. And
Yeah.
either we read it into the record and we
Okay.
discuss it, or we get it, we bring it up the next time, because I know, I have a lot of questions.
I
about the fire.
agree, and it was not my intention to
I know,
talk
I'm
about
just-
that tonight, and I think. when
I'm
it's
not blaming
appropriate.
him for, I really am not. I'm just trying to say, I'd like to be a part of that. So that's, you
So
know,
we can do that. We can bring it up as an agenda item at our next meeting.
is that okay?
That's fine with
Okay.
me, however the process will work.
All right, and then if everyone can, well, tell you what, I'll give, Mary my copy of the letter.
Oh, okay.
Nick forwarded it to me about an hour ago, half an hour ago. So, yeah, we can,
We'd like to discuss these at the next Charter Revision Commission meeting.
So that needs to be
Well,
correspondence
we
to the
can-
next meeting.
that'll be correspondence for the next meeting.
Got it.
Okay. All right, well then, we can resume with, consideration of the 2019 Charter Revision Commission proposals. And the first one that we had said it,
Minutes, minutes.
oh, I'm sorry,
You don't like the minutes.
where's, I'm trying to find,
Minutes are attached to the agenda.
I move the minutes be accepted.
Second.
Presented.
oh, this is so cute.
August 26th.
Yeah, I just don't, I had the draft minutes and draft minutes, I mean, the draft agenda didn't have the minutes on there.
No, Tim?
Oh,
Says in
I
your
got it,
attachment.
consideration approval, got it.
It's in your attachment. This
Yeah, I think I
attachment.
just gave away my attachments, but that's okay. Yeah, so someone made the
Yes.
motion
I
and
made
a
a
second.
second.
Any comments?
Who's second?
Alice.
Alex.
Any comments?
The Chairman, one quick comment. Under consideration of the 2019 Charter Revision Commission proposals, and we looked at section C6-3B, budget referendum. Mary, did you happen to go back and look at the tape to see that, how they did? Is that correct? It was looking at the discussion of 7 to 10 days and changing advisory question?
No, it was actually, I think we had her list
Okay.
3B, but it was really 3B3 is what we were leaving for
Okay,
further discussion.
got it. 3B3.
So what should it read, Tim?
Section C6-3B3.
Great. And then what's in parentheses stays?
I don't know where mine went.
3,
Okay, let's go.
we tabled 3C.
Yes, so
It's C, we tabled to
it's
8:20.
really, we were discussing, what we tabled was changing the advisory question.
Right. You,
There was a general consensus about
Yeah.
the 7 to 10 days.
so yeah, to your point, 3B3 was tabled. 3B1 would have been okay, and that was, in the minutes, that was the 7 to 10 days was approved.
Right, so it's 3B3.
3C.
Can you say it again? C3
It is.
dash what?
No, C6.
C six dash three B three.
So I don't see that in the document.
No,
Let's find it here.
Do we have
C6.
another version of what we were looking at?
C6.
Oh.
C.
I was
Failure
looking at the marked up version, right?
I am too.
The one that's, it's
I
Charter
see
Recommendations 2019
six,
updates
C.
2024. Is that a document we're looking at?
C63B.
C6-3B budget.
3B. Budget referendum.
If you call the table
And it's-
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like 4,
B2.
So-
Two questions.
6-3. And then it looks like 4.
It's C
Where's the B? Oh, I'm
Six.
sorry. No, it's
3B2.
6-3 B3.
There's no.
So
Do you have the
I
marked
don't
up
see
version?
one of the documents.
Right.
The
This is one-
confusion is
Charter
that 3 was
2019
in the
update.
marked up version.
This
It's
is
it's the marked up version.
I have the marked up
But
version.
I don't see.
And 3 is
There's a
eliminated.
C3.
Right,
Three,
we're,
six,
we
three,
were
one,
discussing,
which is
we were
7 to 10
discussing what
days.
was eliminated.
But I don't see a
This
C.
is
different
C6.
version C.
3.
Okay, so there's a later version of this?
I have no idea what's going
I don't have a
on.
3.
3 was marked up.
Okay. What is the title of the document that we are looking
So
at?
this is the version right here that I have.
Okay.
The version.
C6, 3,
Town meeting. It should
B.
get down to B,
2.
and there was a 3 in here that had been deleted
Yes.
by mistake.
And we're tabling that.
That got tabled,
Yes,
but the other did not. 7, 10, 10 days did not get tabled.
I wrote okay.
Yes, you can look at your agenda.
Oh, okay. So this is what was deleted.
See, this should say C6, 3B,
3.
3. 7 to 10 days.
But, but that comes out. Yeah, this
But
was
the advisory
okay. It's just
question-
changing the advisory question.
Makes sense?
Got it?
So yours kind of looks formatted
Do you know
differently.
what is the password to the municipal center best?
Visitor.
I think it's Bethel 06801,
Visitor.
exclamation.
Visitor.
Or is it
Visitor.
visitor?
Is it capital?
Visitor 06801.
Visitor 06801.
All lower cap.
All lower.
Lower.
That's what I was saying.
Oh, Mary. Yeah, that was when I think in my email. I mentioned this, that this had been knocked out, but it wasn't knocked out.
But it wasn't approved. It was
Right.
knocked out. So during the last.
Well, yeah, the last one that just had it in red. Right. It didn't have lines through it.
That's just a different format.
Gotcha.
Maybe that's when you open up the document, you can choose how you want it to appear. I think that's because mine's showing with a strikeout.
Yeah.
That's what
Right.
mine is
Depending
showing.
upon what version of Word you have and your settings. you know.
Yeah,
Right.
I've got 365, so it's latest.
Some will appear as a
Yep,
strikeout,
yep.
some will appear
I
as
think it's
a
the options.
tab on the side.
So just for clarity's sake, are we deleting that number 3?
No,
or are we not?
The proposed, we're looking at what was proposed by the previous Charter Revision Commission
Okay,
and deciding whether to accept their changes.
and they had suggested that we delete that.
They had just suggested that, and we last month, or last meeting, discussed it and then tabled it.
Got it. Okay, understood. Thank you.
And this is the resumption of that discussion.
Understood.
Only as pertains to approving the minutes. Yes?
No,
No,
Okay.
So this is, so I guess,
we're
Mr.
discussing-
Chairman, the reason I brought it up for the name change was, I
Yes,
know
we're in the
that,
middle of
that
approving
the,
minutes.
the board, or excuse me, the commission agreed to the 7 to 10 days, which is in it is right, C63B1.
Right.
Is what I have. They agreed to that, but they tabled changing the advisory question.
Yes.
If we want to
Right.
reflect that in the
So-
minutes,
so the minutes, if the minutes could reflect then that
So I would,
It should
We
be
did
C
table.
6-3B3.
correct. And for the.
So just add the 3 and then you can delete
Advice,
raise 7 to 10 days
Right,
and or
budget referendum advisory question.
it's, well, we're looking, yeah.
Yeah.
This is, but discussion whether 7 to 10 days,
I
that's
crossed that
okay.
No,
No, but
We're just doing the
we're
minutes
trying to
now.
capture the minutes.
The minutes. made
I
it
am,
look like-
I am. I thought the 7 to 10 days was already amended, so that's not what we discussed. We discussed proposing,
Okay, so if you take a look at the top above that,
yeah, I know.
it says several sections were tabled pending information. C6-3B, the first one, number 1, which is 7 to 10 day question, was not tabled. It was approved.
Correct.
Right, so the minutes need to be updated to strike 7 to 10 days. And add 6-3-3B, put a 3 after the end of it. And that would be correct for the minutes. That's what happened.
And that's the advisory question.
Right, the advisory question was tabled, yes.
Yes, that's what I have written in my
Okay.
notes.
So what we're saying is we have to.
We're
strike
trying to get the
7
minutes
10
to
days,
I'm
reflect
trying to
that.
get the minutes to reflect what we actually talked about.
Which we just did.
Right.
The minutes are, this is only what was tabled, not what we talked about. Everything else was.
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
I think we're saying the same thing, but I
okay,
didn't think that the wording was right on this.
fair enough.
Okay, well, let me try to read it and see if everyone agrees.
Sorry for opening. the
So
can of worms.
that line is C6-3B3, budget referendum, parentheses, discussion Ray, changing advisory question.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's,
I got it.
okay, everyone's okay with that. So that's the correction. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I so moved. Second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? No. And no John yet, okay.
He's not attending tonight.
I thought he said he wasn't gonna be.
He said he wasn't gonna attend and then he told Mary that he may come in via Teams.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Okay, so then going back to the budget referendum, the previous Charter Revision Commission had suggested striking that third paragraph out altogether and not have advisory questions at all.
Now we're getting down to the business of discussing the charter.
That's the next, yes, the next. So we adopted the minutes.
Right, no. I'm wondering how you're going, because you approached it very methodically the last time. Are we just gonna do scatter shots?
So what we're, we're going back to the first thing that we tabled. We didn't have a consensus on this item and we decided to bring it up this time, or it's left open for further discussion.
You got it.
So, and this was the first thing, earliest in the charter that we had set aside. And I think we discussed about the history of why the budget question came up to begin with.
Mhm.
This had to do with the Board of Finance. After budget was turned down, they were saying they didn't know why it got turned down, didn't know whether people thought the budget was too high or too low. So the next time Charter Revision came along, this question came along. So I think the previous Board of Selectmen, Dan, you can kind of correct me on this, the previous Board of Selectmen suggested having a just right, or did that come up in this board?
The previous Board of Selectmen, as I understand from the report, actually proposed to eliminate the non-binding advisory question due to the belief that did not provide appropriate guidance following a failed referendum. However, the commission amended the proposal to add just right to the two existing options. So that's kind of where it stood in the report that came out.
But then this report doesn't have the just right, it's strikes it out altogether.
Well, this is, if you look at what the what, this was, I think this might have been stricken out by mistake.
Okay,
Because what we forwarded to the commission, C6, 3,
Annual town meeting.
Yeah.
Budget referendum.
It's the second page, Dan.
yeah. Yeah, just right, okay. So we actually recommended what they did the first time, add just right response to non-binding advisory questions. It was proposed by the previous board of selectmen, amended by the 2008 Charter Revision Commission. The board of selectmen recommend removing too high, too low questions altogether. But when they actually sent out the report, the commission amended the proposal. They were the ones who came up with the just right. It was the commission.
okay.
So they changed their mind?
They went over what the board of selectmen wanted to do.
Oh, okay.
The
What
board of
do-
selectmen wanted to eliminate it.
What do other towns do?
I don't know if anybody's ever added a just right. I know some places have too high, too low.
So
Yeah.
Nick, are you able to kind of confirm that? Because it's not reflecting in the
reflected
markup.
on that because it came after, change came at the last meeting of the commission prior to this report being made. So I'm working on a version. of it.
Yeah.
We
Could
never
it-
even drafted it.
Well, because it never got drafted.
Could it be that this was the report that was sent to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen sent it back for adjustments? They made some adjustments, maybe not others, and then it came back again, and so this was,
Yes,
okay.
yes. So this was the last version in my system prior to that. So it's not perfect, but
So-
we're fleshing that out.
In our reviewing of the previous Charter Revision Commission's work, then what we should be reviewing is whether whether we agree with the change to be too high, just right, too low.
Or neither?
Because that would
Whatever
be,
you want.
because that would be agreeing.
Yeah.
That would be agreeing with what the previous Charter Revision Commission proposed.
But obviously, the board is open to doing whatever they want.
You try that for 20 years and see how it goes.
I think it's fussy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think just my personal opinion is that it's fussy and that we just get rid of both of them. And the other, but it begs the question that if you pass one side of the budget, the way our charter is written is you can't touch the other side of the budget. And that doesn't make sense. So I think it would be in conjunction with something to consider as to, wow, the voting process of the budget as an issue. But the too high, too low, every Board of Finance, and I don't know whether you would agree with me or not, has basically said it's useless because too high, too low, what?
And you can't restrict on a ballot saying, if you said no, answer this question. There's no way to.
Well,
Gotta
you
sort
can,
that out.
have, like I described last time, you can have multiple answers besides too high, too low, just right. You have, I agree, but it's too high. I agree, but it's too low. I agree and it's just right, meaning I voted yes. And I don't agree with this budget and it's because it's too high. I don't agree because it's too low. I don't agree, but it's just right. That one doesn't make sense, but someone will say that.
But I also think that goes back to the issues that we've talked about numerous times of how much handholding does the public need? If they really feel strongly about it, they'll show up or write letters at the public hearing and the town meeting and express themselves. And if you've got a room full of people saying, please raise the, whatever budget, you kind of get the sense of what everybody really means by that. I don't mean to be dismissive, but I do think if the
Right.
public wants to answer those questions, they can.
But if you think about when this was first added to the charter, we didn't have the internet as we have today. We didn't have social media. We didn't have a way to hear directly from the people. And it may not be an official thing, but people are talking and we're hearing what they're saying. So nowadays, I think the Board of Finance knows if the budget got voted down just from the chatter on social media, they know whether it was too high or too low. And as you said, people that are really feeling strongly about it are going to let the Board of Finance know. They're going to stand up at the town meeting. If you don't use social media, they're going to come to the town meeting and they're going to say, I approve this budget. It's just right. Or
You have to be careful though, because that's not an open forum. Social media can't be it's not.
Right. But what we're trying to get here is the Board of Finance wants to understand it got rejected. Do I need to raise it or lower it? And that's almost silly to me because if it got rejected, we'd probably need to lower it. It would be a very rare occasion.
New Fairfield.
Right, but it could happen. But I'll bet the top talked about it. I'll bet the Board of Finance knew that, why people thought it was too low, and
There was a lot
regardless
going
of
on.
the questions. But yeah, there's a lot talked about there, but
But you're right. I mean, that should be the presumption. And unfortunately, we had some Board of Finances in the past that decided they would just wring their hands and say, we don't know what it means.
right, well, they still don't know. They just don't know that they don't know.
Yeah.
Do we know if this was the 2007 amendment?
No, that predates.
I was curious, because that is in the time of social media. I remember vaguely when they did this, and they came out, I don't remember why, because I wasn't here doing that.
You don't remember why?
Why they did the too high, too low.
Oh,
Do you remember?
oh, yeah, yeah. I told last month, but I'll do. So I think we had gone through several too high, too lows. I mean, I'm sorry, several
Rejections.
budget rejections. And then the Board of Finance said, we don't know why people rejected. It. We don't know if they're rejecting it because it's too low. And so many people who voted on it, voted it down and said, of course it's too high. Pushed the whole idea of having it too high, too low. And we weren't the first committee to do that. But,
It was either 2003 or 2007.
Right.
That's the last.
If we take this off completely,
It wasn't 2003 because I was first selected.
So then
it was
So that
during
budget
Bert. It
passed.
was during Bert's
It
time.
was 2007.
I think it was, yeah. So if we take this off, there are going to be some people in town that say, how are we going to know now whether the budget's too high or too low? And I think everybody on the Board of Finance is going to look at it and say, okay, fine, because we didn't use it anyway. So maybe we go back and talk to the Board of Finance and say, what do you really want to know? And how do you propose that you know that? Because they already say, and they agree that this doesn't give them the information they need. So
But
maybe
does
they
the
get that
first
information
question,
from general chatter.
but
in town
does
now.
the first question, in other words, yes or no on the school budget, yes or no on the town budget, does that give them information on what they need to do?
Well, it tells them that the townspeople don't agree with the budget if they
Right.
voted no,
Right.
but again, you can go back to those original Board of Finance members who said, but we don't know whether it's how to adjust it, because we don't know
Right.
whether it's too hard. I think nowadays they do know. I think that, if it's not being talked about on social media or at the town meeting, those who feel strongly can come to the directly to the Board of Finance meeting, and talk about
But
it.
here's a scenario that I would put out there, because we all know that the education community is very engaged, as they should be. I think that that's wonderful. But because we have two separate budgets, they may actually approve the Board of Education budget, and the town budget is left with no opinions. So we can only then infer that the budget needs to be reduced.
Right. Or find out some other way by listening to the chatter in town, or
You can't, as part of a public process, listen to the chatter in town. But do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
if people come to you, they
That's
write
not
letters,
binding,
they're on,
sure.
you know what I mean?
Right.
If people express themselves publicly, then of course you can consider it, but it has to all be extremely transparent. I don't think those high and low questions add anything to that. I think we're saying the same thing essentially, is that I'm not sure the too high, too low helps them in any way.
Does it help our residents, the ability to say their piece? If it's a really controversial budget, you might have a lot of people voting up or down, yes or no.
it doesn't hurt anything to leave this on here.
I mean, what a lot of people do is vote too high, too low, or if they think it's just right, they don't vote at all. And
They
then
don't vote,
there's a
yeah, they
big
don't
drop
vote.
off. And
You mean they don't
people
vote on the?
They don't vote on it.
advisory
They don't
question.
answer the advisory question at all.
Right.
So again, this gets back to the adding the just right would
Yeah,
give somebody
I think that does.
another place to put their vote.
Whereas I often will vote for a budget and say too low.
Yeah, I've done that.
Mhm.
Is it?
But if that gets lost, nobody knows that I did that, and nobody knows how many people did
Well,
that, because you
Well,
can't
yes,
interpolate that from the
you know
data.
how many people voted too low.
But you don't know how many people voted yes to the budget,
That's right.
and it was too low. Or no to the budget, it was too low.
Well, I
That's
think
the
within a
reason.
reason more people will vote yes and too low, then no and too low, unless they're, to your point, if there's an outrage, like there was in New Fairfield, you actually, people had voting down the budget because it was too low.
Right, right.
That's pretty rare.
But what I'd like to
Well,
see
if we
is,
had Board of Finance that tries to gut the school budget, I could see that
Yeah.
happen.
what I'd like to see is if Nick can get
Patty
us
wants
for
to
the,
talk.
for the next meeting. The actual, because we're reviewing the changes that the previous Charter Revision Commission made as to whether we're in a consensus with them. And so I don't want to say we're in a consensus with them if we don't know what the language is, other than they added the just right. But
That was the only add. It was no additional language.
I kind of like, I'm sorry, Penny wanted to speak. Let's let Penny
No, I
speak.
think actually. Joe,
And the
did you
previous-
hear it?
Previous commission was back and forth between striking altogether or adding the just right.
So I want to go back to something that Karen said. What does the Board of Finance want?
Right.
And I would like to know what information will help.
Depends on the
I
Board of
think-
Finance.
Well, yes, and at the same time, there's a certain kind of theme that runs through boards of finance. You know, if you're looking for what kind of information they want, I think that's going to be the same no matter what. I am always in favor of giving people more options to have their say and fewer. And if this is one way, I have also often voted yes on a budget too low. That's my way of somebody listen and say, it's not right. It may have passed, but this is not right. I would prefer not to take that mechanism away from the people. I don't think it's infantilizing the public. I think that we have to remember that we have a very, very small turnout at these things, which is a big problem. But the people that do come out, this gives them a chance to have their say.
Yeah.
Would I like them to come to the budget meetings? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are they going to come to the budget meetings?
No.
Maybe if we, set up a cappuccino machine, or give them food or something like that.
Candy machine.
That would work with me. I go anyway. I would rather keep the language in there, but I also want to know, what does the Board of Finance want? What are they looking for? And does this help? Does this hurt?
Bill, were you going to say something?
No,
Okay.
I think maybe we
So, Pat?
should, perhaps, consult with the Board of Finance members and get some ideas from them.
Does CCM have other people's charters? How do we find out what the other towns do?
I mean, you can, just about
Probably online.
every charter is online at Unicode, which ours is, most are. Not every, but most. But
Okay.
not every charter might address this either.
I was just curious. I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Pat?
I agree that, let me back. I believe the issue that we started with was the verbiage, the language of the question. Why can't the language be more specific or not as abstract as you said? Why can't it just be recreated to get away from that? Is it or isn't it? I think it serves a purpose being on, in the machine, because people, that's when they're attentive. That's when their mind is on it. It serves as another purpose, just like social media. And I know a lot of people in town that are not on social media don't want to engage in that because there's always a back and forth and the keyboard warriors. Some people just don't want to get involved in it, but they have a strong feeling on, where their paycheck is going. So I would suggest that it stay, but it be worded in a different manner, whatever that may be. Because I get a little bit fuzzy on all of this back and forth talk because I have not been involved in all of this process. But I can tell you, sitting here as a citizen of the town, I think it's important to at least help direct our elected officials with my opinion. But it has to be worded right.
So we had that pretty much the same question every, I shouldn't even say pretty much the same. We have had the same advisory question on every budget referendum ballot. And so the language that was struck out, and do you have the new version, right, of the cross out? It says that budget referendum shall also contain a non-binding advisory question as to whether or not each of the proposed town operating budget and Board of Education budget is too high or too low. And so the previous Charter Revision Commission added or just right, right? Too high, comma, too low, comma, or just right. And already on the budget, in the main questions, question 1 is the town budget, and it says the specific number of millions of dollars. And then question 2 is, shall we approve the Board of Education budget? Again, a dollar amount.
So-
Could we just defer to what someone had suggested, that we ask the Board of Finance, would they be the one to properly come up with wording?
Well, we can invite them to come to our next meeting. Like
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Karen?
So I liked what Dan touched on and then Alice expanded on, which is that, or Penny, I'm sorry, expanded on, which is that this is a power to the people's kind of a thing. If we take that off, they might feel like now they have no way of communicating to us. So I think it's useful for that, if nothing else, that the townspeople have a say in whether it's too high or too low. I like adding the just right wording. And I also think that this protects us in case we get a corrupt Board of Finance who wants to gut the school budget, for example. It allows the people to say, no, this is too low, and not let that happen. And not only with their vote of no, but also their assurance that I believe this is too low. So I think it's a protection, even though it doesn't give us the precise kind of information that we might want to have. And I also think that anybody who's ever taken a stats course thinks this is garbage. Anybody who's not taken a stats course thinks it's valuable information. Therefore it is, because if you think it's valuable, then it is. So I completely flipped that I'm in favor of leaving it in, but correcting the little grammar mistake of or not, and then adding the third vote of just right. I think that's the big deal, because if the majority of the people vote just right, the Board of Finance knows they've done a great job. Whether the budget passed or not, if most people think it's just right, you know, some people are going to vote no because my taxes are going to go up. I don't care if the budget's just right to run the town. I'm going to vote no anyway, but I think that's going to add the information that they're looking for.
At the beginning of the discussion, we were taking it from the standpoint of the Board of Finance,
Mhm.
which it still may or may not be valuable. But taking it, as you pointed out, from the standpoint of people's opportunity to communicate.
Yeah.
I'll support the just right. It's fine.
Yeah.
So we will, invite the Board of Finance to come and talk to us. But it looks like we're at a consensus at this point on accepting what the prior Charter Revision Commission.
They did all the work, then
Yeah,
Right.
and again, as far as the specific wording, we'll be doubling back.
Right.
Because we're just kind of coming to a consensus, but
the
not.
wording comes from.
Right, maybe we send the Board of Finance
The wording
our
comes from the legal.
suggested change and the reason why, and then they can either come back to us and say, oh, we don't agree with you at all, or
You tell them what
That's
you think, and it works out.
It's also worth mentioning, just so you understand from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, we adopted everything that was in the previous, I would say the previous Board of Selectmen, the previous Charter Commission did. But it wasn't just blanket, we generally agreed. We generally agreed with what they were doing, because we could have blacked every one of those. This was the current Board of Selectmen's choice to bring forward to the current Charter Revision Commission. Just so you understand, you can do whatever you want, because that was what was done before. You can look at anything in the charter. But the Board of Selectmen did vote to support this, the current ones,
with just right.
with the adjustment. Yeah.
So if we reinstate that paragraph, strike the or not, because that's not grammatically correct.
You don't have to reinforce.
No, you're not, it
Oh,
was
sorry,
taken
yes.
out by
It was
mistake.
never,
It's in.
oh,
It's in.
okay, so then we need to add the phrase
It'd just be adding.
or just right at the end and strike the or not.
Yeah, you're right. Or is, but Mr. Chairman, is my understanding you were pointing to table it and invite the board of selectmen before you vote on it, or?
Well, actually, we haven't voted on anything.
Right, no, I'm just.
Yeah, so
planning to talk
we
to
are
board-
coming, I
outside
think
Board
we
of
all
Finance.
feel we have a general consensus on accepting what the prior Charter Revision Commission did, even though it isn't reflected in front of us, but we're getting that. So yes, we'll invite them to come and provide any further information, but anyway, so I think we're set here. We can move on to the next thing that we said we look at again. That was C7-5A. Oh, and that had to do with resignations and removals. And that relates to the letter that came from Lisa Berg today about resignations, and resignations need to go through her office. And the other thing I noticed too is that this relates to section C3-3 that kind of outlines the process for resigning. And so when the previous commission made those changes, it didn't really change C3-3 regarding vacancies. But it says, any elected official of the town desiring to resign from his or her office, except the town clerk, shall submit his or her written resignation to the town clerk, and in the case of the town clerk, to the Board of Selectmen. If such elected official is a member of a board or commission, a copy of the written notice of the resignation shall be given to the elected official, to the chair, by the elected official to the chairman of the board of the commission, in addition to the town clerk.
Mr. Chairman, what number are you on?
Oh,
Trying to
3-3,
3-3, went to the front, okay.
3-3 talks about resignations from elected boards.
And then 7.5 talks about appointed boards.
Right, and so we
We're saying they're
probably
the
need,
same, right?
it's the same process, and I think we just need to lift that language from 3-3 and possibly put it in instead of having 7-5 A and B. Insert a new A, which would be the lifted language from 3-3. But I think the important message is that if the first selectman's office or the chairman of the board or commission receives resignation, they should just forward it right to the town clerk.
3-3 is not.
3-3,
Is vacant, that vacancies.
that's about vacancies.
So it's always been correct in C3.3.
Yes, that's the
And
process.
C7.5 is ambiguous.
And C7-5, if you take a look at it, this is all new language. It is a whole new section. There's never a section on resignations and removals. So this was put in, but it kind of misses the front end of what's in 3-3 about if you're going to resign, this is the process.
So this A in 3-3 is gonna go in where C7-5A is that what you're saying?
Well, I think you look some language from 3-3 about resigning from a board and make that the new 7-5-A, and then the A that's in there now from the previous Charter Revision Commission could become a B. And it just talks about, if the letter, when the resignation is effective, that's that section. And then the last section is about being removed from a board.
So what does, that does not coincide with Lisa's letter, however, because I think she's saying that resignations need to go directly to
That's
her.
right. So in the new B, written notice of resignation by any member, blah, blah, we got to take out where it's upon receipt of the written resignation by any one of the following. That's the board, any member of the board. The Board of Selectmen, any member of the Board of Selectmen, or the town clerk. It really has to remain the town clerk.
Right.
And perhaps insert a directive that if this board is, if the first selectman or the chair of the commission receives the resignation letter, it's their duty to give it to the town clerk, because it's not effective until the town clerk gets it. That's the way it is now.
Well, Lisa says that it's not that's the way it's working now.
Okay, so what are you saying, Lisa's?
Lisa's saying that no resignation is effective until she gets it.
Well, that's what I just said.
And
I
then
know.
they should come directly to her, not
They
to
should
the
come
board.
directly to her.
They should come directly to her. However, sometimes people move out of town and they give it to their chair. If the chair receives it, they should march it over to Lisa. And then Lisa has it in her hand. If the first selectman's office receives the resignation letter, they should give it to the town clerk. That's kind of,
Except on her second page, next to the last paragraph. And this would be a question for Nick, because I'm imagining that there's a legal definition of this. Having consulted with the lead attorney, I was given specific instructions to accept only a live signature on a written letter of resignation.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that the person who is resigning must present by themselves, or is a letter of resignation with a signature,
it's an
is
ink,
that acceptable? They're
It's a-
two different things.
it's an ink signature. It's a live, when she says a live
can't email
signature,
it
she
in.
doesn't mean you appear in person.
Are we
It
sure
means
about that?
it means a signature. And the,
That's what they said.
That's at least, okay.
Lisa does mean a wet signature.
Weddings.
Like not a copy or a fax or an email.
So they could mail it in.
they
Yeah,
could
They would
mail
have
it
to
in
mail it in. Yeah.
Okay,
That-
Lisa.
that's what he-
All right.
to Lisa, but if they mailed it to the first selectman's office, the first selectman can take that original letter with a wet signature, walk it down the
And bring it
hallway to
over.
Lisa,
Okay.
and it's still.
Okay, so let's say somebody moves out of town and they email their chairman and they say, I'm living in Roanoke, Virginia now. They still have to send a letter to the town clerk in order to resign.
Yes, however, that new last paragraph, I believe, gives a reason to remove them.
Well, felony will do it, yeah, sure.
But no,
But also moving out of
Moving
town
out of
without
town.
resigning.
Oh,
moving out of town.
Can I intercept?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? So this is kind of been an issue because we have had somebody move out of town and they failed to resign. So it was a little bit of a lift to try to get them to turn around and write a letter back. When they already moved out of town, and by everything in here, you cease to be an elector. So you can't be, so in that case, we should just consider them resigned. There's some been back and forth with Lisa, whether or not, the wet signature or whatever. I think it's fine leaving a wet signature. I think it doesn't matter, but we are gonna come into a point where digital signatures are currently legal.
And we may already.
Yeah.
Town clerks are always gonna be veer on the side of wedding signatures, because recordable documents on the land records still have to have a live wet signature.
Right.
I can't say definitively if this is correct, what Lisa said, that the resignation is not effective if it's not alive, if it's.
it just was.
And that was an opinion of the previous attorney. I personally believe it would be effective, but.
Well, when
that's something this body can determine.
when she refers to the lead attorney, she's actually talking about the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah.
So that's where her directions.
Oh, the lead attorney, okay. So remember, she talked about the last attorney in the town, but with me.
No, she's not talking
Right,
about
right.
Corporation Counsel.
Yeah.
She's talking about Secretary of State's office, Ted Bromley, who's no longer there. But
Yeah.
So if someone moves away, doesn't resign, and doesn't respond to correspondence or whatever, that's covered by dereliction of duty.
Yeah, paragraph B.
So, yeah, paragraph B. So for members who are removed by the Board of Selectmen, they don't have to sign a resignation letter.
No.
So you're covered if somebody just moves out and leaves, then you go through this process of the public hearing and inviting them to come, which they may not show up, they probably won't. But that's your method of removing them if they won't provide a resignation letter.
Yeah.
If they moved away, or if they just stop coming to meetings or whatever.
Should we also include in that list ineligibility to serve? In other words, I moved out of town, I'm no longer an elector of the town, I'm ineligible
That's
to
here, it
serve.
says the inability to serve.
So,
It
yeah, I
says
think
willful
that,
neglect of duty, the
Yeah.
inability to serve.
Well, I was thinking
conviction,
also
etc.
ineligibility to serve. So they may have the ability to serve by flying back, but they're not living.
The
here.
inability to serve, I'm assuming means they're no longer eligible.
Yeah.
Do we need to spell out both words in
Well,
inability and ineligibility? We might need both words there.
You may need both, or inability, I'm not sure whether that's sounding like a,
Well,
A
it says, but
disability.
it says that in order to be appointed to one of these boards or elected to one of those boards, you must be an elector in town, you must
Right.
be a registered voter in town. If I move to Florida for half the year, I may still keep this as my voting.
Right.
I'm still eligible to be on a board, but I'm not able to per se, because I'm only here half the year, I'm missing half the
Plus the
meetings or
3
whatever.
consecutive meetings.
Yeah, I'd be missing 3 consecutive, but with Zoom these days, maybe not.
Oh, yeah.
So, people have Zoom, I have recently Zoomed in from my vacation. So, could somebody who goes away for half the year still be eligible to serve? Yes, they could. But the Board of Selectmen could take this inability clause and say, well, you're not able to because you're far away for half the year. And then it becomes a discussion at the hearing of, yes, I can do it through Zoom or whatever.
yeah, I think it's a matter of performance.
Yeah,
Right. Your inability, if you can't participate in the meeting, whether by Zoom, if the meeting is a hybrid.
Right.
uh,
as long as you're legally registered to vote in Bethel, no matter where you live part of the year, you're eligible to serve on a board. So then it becomes a question of, are you doing it properly? Are you able to do it?
And Karen, that would lead us into the question of in-person / hybrid.
Right, which I think we reached a consensus and that was going to be up to each board.
Right,
So if
Right.
you're on a board that's meeting in person because it's the housing or whatever commission,
right.
and you propose that and your board doesn't agree, then no, you can't serve
Right, you
anyone.
can't- right,
But
exactly.
there's also a public hearing process that this talks about
Yeah.
too. So it's not just someone signing off and going, they haven't been around and we're just gonna let them go.
Right.
Right, they can come and speak up for themselves and they can say, even though I haven't lived here for 6 months, I've attended every meeting through Zoom or whatever. Or I would attend, but the board won't do a Zoom meeting or whatever. And then it becomes a discussion with the board select.
Karen, we actually had that with planning and zoning for a bit, where the chairperson was not able to attend in person, but they were available on Zoom.
Yeah, and we've already agreed that that's okay.
And that's different too than having a hybrid meeting. So any of the individual members can participate.
Right.
Without it being a hybrid meeting.
Right.
Uh,
And I had something.
Yes, please.
One, I just want to mention the Connecticut Supreme Court, it was yesterday, made a ruling on definition of residence. And it had to do with a case involving bed and breakfasts in local communities. So when we use that term residence, I would ask the attorney board to go look at that further within the term of residence that we're using. It also, this passage has legal terms such as finding of cause. Is there a legal definition of finding of cause? And what is the definition of willful neglect of duty? Is there a legal definition behind that? Because looking from the devil's advocate, well, what's a willful neglect of duty? In my opinion, may be something more. So we got to make sure if we're using that term, that there's a legal definition therefore behind it. I would also add that we should put some provision in here. It says that it should go after this commission determines, it should go to the selectmen. I think we should clarify that, upon determination that this person is no longer active, all inclusive what's in there, that it shall be the duty of the chairman to notify the clerk of it, because it's not exactly clear on who the
Yeah,
duty
but you're
is
saying advising the clerk
of
of what?
of that person you've removed. He is no longer valid person on that commission, board,
So
committee.
you're
what have
saying
you.
notify the clerk if they're not attending meetings?
No, if the commission determined, commission board said, hey, that guy's not pulling his weight, we have determined that this person has met the definition of willful neglect of duty, all of the terms that are involved here, then it should be the obligation of the chairman. He's the point guy, he's a responsible party at that point, to notify the clerk, and I think it should be defined.
It should go to the first selectman's office.
Well,
Because
well, whatever.
Because it would be up to them to act on this paragraph.
Public hearing.
Right.
No,
Well-
I think I know what you're saying. Whoever makes that final determination, that person is responsible for taking it to the town clerk.
Correct.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
under the written language, that final determination is made by Board of Selectmen.
Right, so then they
The,
are the
the,
people responsible.
the intent really is the appointed positions are at kind of the will of the board of selectmen. They're appointing them.
Mhm.
You also don't want the board of selectmen just to turn around and willy-nilly, chop people off. But the commission itself really has no say on their board, who gets to serve and who doesn't, because it's up to the board of selectmen.
Mhm.
So I think that's what the whole intent is. It goes to the board of selectmen.
Right.
Board of selectmen initiates any procedure.
My point is there
Yeah.
should be a very clear line of process.
Yes,
That's it.
agreed.
And then if we have these terms in there, well, we better make sure we know what the definition of those terms are. They should have backup with no subjectivity to what they are.
I think we need to clarify with Lisa too. If someone is being removed from the board against their wishes, is there a letter the Board of Selectmen sends saying this person has been removed, blah, blah, blah? And does that serve as a resignation letter? Because that person might not be willing to give a resignation letter.
It's not deemed a resignation, but a removal.
Right. So is there something that Lisa has to do differently to file a different format?
Probably whatever the board of selectmen decides in the minutes is the legal justification for Lisa to remove them from on board where she tracks them. And a
Point
position.
of clarification. How will the board of selectmen find out about this? I think that was.
Yeah,
I just see
Point.
layers
How,
going.
yeah, how will you
Well-
find out about it?
I think, number one, and to the attorney Nick's point, think of this as a constitution, as a bigger picture. I mean, it's very difficult to decide right now how many different ways we could find out that somebody says willful neglect or whatever it is. It's gonna come up. The person is either not showing up, there's complaints, they're MIA, there's a lot of ways to figure that out, and it could come through any different pipeline. If we try to restrict that and create a process each way that we find out, then all of a sudden, if we find out by some random choice or some random way that we never knew, does that restrict us from getting rid of them? See what I mean? Right now, it's set up very broad that upon us finding out that one of these could be an issue, the board of selectmen can act after a public hearing. I mean, I think that's why it's sufficiently broad. In my,
You're correct. The more narrow you become, likelihood of unintended consequences that I can't contemplate everything that can happen.
And you notice it says may through there, not will. So even if you can commit a felony, you may be removed. The Board of Selectmen could choose to keep you.
that's true. That's true.
But if you're in prison, then you're not a voter anymore. An elector.
There you go.
And I think to Pat's point, the definition is important. And if you look at earlier on in eligibility for office, anybody has to be a resident elector. Elector is the magic word, Tim, not resident, just elector.
Right.
So you were right on clarifying that.
And we had a-
Yes, Penny.
Yeah, I have a question. And I may be missing this in the document. Right now, we're speaking in that paragraph about appointed people. Gibble, and
Right.
stuff. Is there similar protocol for somebody who is elected?
No,
I thought
No,
we were
you're-
saying that it was gonna be the same, and that's why. we
no,
were
no, no,
copying
that's,
3.3
the,
down here.
the process for resigning is the same,
Okay.
Right.
but the Board of
This
Selectmen
is
cannot
removal.
remove elected officials.
Oh,
Okay, but that's actually not where I'm going.
Oh,
No,
okay.
the Board of, no, but however, should there be criteria for remaining on a commission?
Okay, well, principally, they're an elected official, so the only people to get rid of them are the people. But there are, and if we did anything or tried to do something, I think it'd be in violation of having a recall clause. Because the state does not allow us to have a recall election, a recall clause, or anything like that. So I think if we're trying to come up with some way that get rid of somebody, I think the only way you can do it is force them to resign through public pressure.
Okay.
Am I kind of on track? Yeah.
You're correct, which has been the general consensus with elected positions. versus that of
So an elected person could.
They're there
commit
for the
felony,
term.
They're there for the term,
And there's no way to remove them,
Unless they resign.
unless they resign.
unless they resign.
And even if they
Or
don't
unless they
show
go
up,
to jail and they're no longer an elected.
even if they
If you're
get
an elector, you could, well, technically, yeah, you could go after them and the court would probably do that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
It's a high bar for an elected official, as it should be. I mean, they've been chosen by
right.
the townspeople but the appointed is a whole nother ballgame. And that's usually where you have a problem is, somebody moves, can't get, something happens. Somebody who's appointed, who should be able to do something.
Right.
You know,
Okay, thank you.
good question.
There's nothing we have to use it.
Mr. Chairman, might I
Yes.
make a recommendation?
yes,
So when you were starting to talk about A first, and I'll just float some language and then, the attorney can look at it later. But what if A was written, any appointed official of the town desiring to resign shall submit his or her written resignation to the town clerk, period. A resignation that does not specify the date of said resignation shall take effect upon the receipt of written resignation by the town clerk.
yeah, and that captures what we're
That
looking
captures what
for.
you're looking
And I
for.
think you may want to, Nick, you may want to just grab some of the language from 3-3.
which tracks the statutory language
Right.
anyway, so
Well, the other part of 3-3 though, really talks more about filling a vacancy also with an elected town committee.
Right, yeah, no, I'm just talking about the portion with
Okay.
regard to resignation.
Yeah.
Because,
so where it started, any elected official of the town desiring to resign from his or her office.
Yeah, any
But not
appointed
elected.
official.
Now,
Any appointed
change of, well,
Yeah.
I'm reading from the elected set.
Change to appointed, yep.
Use this language for change to appointed.
And that's what I just
Right.
read. I did exactly that. I took the same language.
so I think that will do it. And in that case, we'll have an A, we'll have a B. Actually, some of
B will be
7.5B is already included. I'm sorry, 7.5A, the original A, about resignation effective dates is already part of 3-3. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think gets us where we want to go. Is there any other discussion of 7-5? I mean, I would like to see maybe a little more clear process about the removals, but does it say that you've got to give notice of a public hearing, but it doesn't say you have to give notice to the affected party?
It
So
does.
it shall be
It
mailed to the
does-
last known address of the
Yeah.
affected.
Oh, less known address, good. Okay. All right. Anything else on 7.5A? See?
Just to rehash the commission's thoughts for my own notes, it's really replacing C7.5A with the lifted language changing to appointed and what was it?
3-3.
3-3. And then on B,
And B,
were we thinking any other changes other than Mr. Robert's suggestion to get the background on the legal part or the definition of willful neglect.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is we don't want a future board of selectmen to come in and throw out all the appointed members of boards and commissions. Because there's been a changing of the guard, but if we have people who are not showing up to meetings, whether they're doing it on purpose or especially if they moved out of town. we
So
need to deal with that.
there was discussion though on inability versus ineligibility.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
Want me to look into that?
well, what if someone is ineligible because they're no longer an elector? Is
It's a moot
that,
point.
that seems very clear as to what ineligibility is. Inability to me sounds more like, I need a wheelchair ramp.
I think you're right. I think inability could be somebody who was
Term,
sick, infirmed, something happens.
die.
Hospital.
Yeah.
Well, I-
Hey, it can
That,
happen.
that solves the.
We're all gonna go.
Yeah, you may not need paperwork for that.
Mr. Chairman, I think to the attorney's point, maybe you put something about, is no longer qualified. I can add one more, is no longer
Right.
qualified. If you want to, I mean, that really, the only qualification is being an elector. That was the only thing that can unqualified.
And if you do that, I would just suggest no longer qualified as an elector.
As an elector.
Because other people will say, oh, you're not qualified for Parks and Recreation. You've
How about
never
just
coached a team.
is no longer a
Eligible.
resident elector?
Yeah.
That is the term in the
Yeah.
front part of the chapter.
And that doesn't happen until they're off the voting rolls. So if I move to a new town,
Well,
I'm,
Technically, when you move with the intent to move and you get residency, that's it.
right?
Like, that's a good
When,
point.
when
Yeah,
you
I mean, the
register,
only-
when you
Almost
register to
positive
vote in your new
it's an
town,
An intent component. It's an
It's
intent.
DMV that.
I'm sorry.
And there's an intent component,
Right.
meaning you actually go somewhere and you're planning to stay there and you start to change your license or you bought a house and it's clear you're not coming back and forth.
so for example, you're in Bethel, your house burns down. You're rebuilding, but in the meantime, you're gonna live with your daughter in Brookfield. You still remain an elector in Bethel.
Because you still own the property, even though
Yeah.
it doesn't have a house on it.
Well, you own the property, and even though you're not living here, your intent is to return. And it may take you a
We're
year
not
to
gonna
build.
get rid of all these vagaries because its
Right.
intent is
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
can be argued both ways, and that's why.
But
lawyers-
really, this whole thing is kind of a stopgap, just because most of them, we have a hard time.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
no way to get rid of somebody appointed.
Right, and we can't imagine all the possibilities.
Right.
Like, I mean, somebody could
Yeah.
buy a house in Bethel intending or not intending to live in it, but not spend time here because they also own a house that's nicer in Newtown or whatever, but they want to be on the Bethel Board of Finance. So those are kind of I think that's covered in all the language
Yeah.
that's in B. I'm just not sure where.
So I don't know how the attorney would feel about this, but there's also the issue that, okay, so somebody's an elector if they're able to vote in all the elections. Property owners can vote in budget.
Only.
for their
Oh, yeah.
only. That doesn't make them elector, does it?
That's interesting.
Okay, just from the voter registration. Mr. Chairman, I think that had a question
Yes.
on the hand.
Also, are you gonna, define or look into that term finding of cause? Because we know there's a definition for just cause, probable cause,
Well, it's-
what is?
Cause
finding
is
of
further
cause?
defined
As long as you're comfortable
in
with
this
it.
section.
Willful neglect of duty, inability to serve, conviction of felony or abandonment of office may constitute a cause.
With
May.
kind of
May.
the open-ended, because we don't know what every justifiable
Yeah,
cause.
I understand it. These things quickly become legal, because just say, you could spin this so many different ways. If somebody died, well, does that, and it wasn't declared, does that mean that that position can't be filled?
But
It
cause
can't be
also
filled.
has,
All of these things have relevance, is my point.
but cause in the legal term has specific definitions depending upon the context.
Yeah, I got
Whether it's an employment or
I mean, so I don't know if we're gonna, other than the definition here, I don't think we're gonna have to find it as a legal term of art that spits out something in a statute or case law to cause this.
What I think is missing, maybe I'm just not, maybe the legalese is just beyond me, but there's not or other causes or other reasons as deemed by the Board of Selectmen. Like these are the only things that listed here that you can be removed for.
This was the last commission's thing.
Right.
What they.
But should
deemed
we
to
have
be-
something ambiguous in there? Like, what if somebody is just mean at their board meetings and everybody wants them to go? And then you can't really, it doesn't fit any of these things that are listed here, but the Board of Selectmen and the board and everybody agrees that person needs to go. Or do we need something more ambiguous here that says, for other reasons as deemed relevant by the Board of Selectmen?
We can't do that. I mean, there's
Excessive
so many
rudeness.
people I'd throw out at each other.
It's really bad. Maybe they're threatening people. whatever.
But
You know,
again,
don't be mean to me.
think-
Yeah, that
think
doesn't
about
work. I
the
mean,
changing power between one party and another, and one party comes in and you leave it vague enough, and they can get rid of all your people because they were rude.
And it's happened.
So
Okay.
I mean, it does get a little tricky because to your point, if we had that in there, you could just find a way to get rid of the people you don't like.
Right.
They are protected because they're appointed for a term.
Yes.
So you can't really go back and take the term away. But then if you have some sort of gotcha, yeah, you could have a,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Board
that
of
was just one
Selectmen
example
coming
of
in.
something that might come up that's not covered by this language.
Yeah.
And do we need to find a way to allow that open, or do we need to cross that bridge when we come to
I'd be careful.
it?
Listen, I kind of like Alice. I think they should serve at the Board of Selectmen's. It's their chance to do it, period. And if somebody is not holding the water, then we should be able to do something about it.
They're
But
appointed by the first selectman and approved by the Board of Selectmen. Was the way, I don't know whether it's written that way or whether that was just custom at the time. But
right.
suggest they were appointed, the first selectman is who receives the letters from chairmen of town committees and interested citizens and all of that. And then the list is approved by the Board of Selectmen. So
Right.
Tim's telling me I'm right.
You're right.
Above it.
You're right. That's how
It's C7-4 appointment. The Board of Selectmen shall appoint by affirmative vote of not fewer than 2 members of said board, members of such regular town boards and commissions as are listed in C7-1.
And some of that is just easy, as Dan could probably tell you, your office is first door as you walk in, and people will just say, I'm interested in, and leave a note or do whatever. They may or may not even be affiliated, or, people
Yeah.
just communicate that way.
I think in practice, what you're saying is somewhat true. Like, when appointments come along, I may get that person from who knows what place. I usually
I
bring it to
think
the
it's a
board.
difference between it,
Yeah.
at the party committee level, you're endorsing the appointments and maybe they're going effectively to the first selectman, but the appointments should be made.
They're made by the board.
by the
Well, they are-
Yeah,
board.
that's what it
right.
says here.
Well, they
Oh,
are-
yeah, and they're voted on by the board.
Yeah, completely voted on by the board, so they make it. But in practice, usually what happens, first selectman brings the appointment to the board. I don't know that we spell that out anywhere else, but
I think
even,
that's just
yeah.
a practice.
yeah.
Yeah.
And with appointments, it's interesting, it depends on the first selectman, because I go to the parties, I ask.
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
what you got?
I mean, most first selectmen do
Well,
it.
even for this.
Yeah.
But, I've had advice from other people say, you should just pick who you want to do interviews for the select. Even for this commission, I've had folks say, you just go out, figure out who you want, don't talk to the parties. I actually decided I wanted to talk to the different parties in town and have their folks endorse that
And
way.
for the most part, it's been done that way.
Yeah.
There have been other times.
Yeah.
Like the fire commission.
Oh, don't start the
The
fire.
committees.
Not yet.
the
No,
committees
not
have
yet. Oh, my
provided
God.
input. Not-
Well, so do we want to
No,
spell
but-
this out? Because that's how it's been done in practice, so we will just spell it
But
out here
it's,
and make it
oh,
that
I think,
way?
but it's where you,
Where you get the
Which
person
paragraph?
doesn't matter.
Okay.
What we're doing,
So
the final
that's not-
authority is the board of selectmen.
The
Right.
final authority is a very public vetting process.
So
It is the Board of
yeah,
I
Selectmen.
think this is something that we should take up another time, because this is not something that the prior Charter Revision Commission was proposing. We're kind of marching through the work that they had done. And then we're
we
gonna
have to do our
double
own
back
stuff, we'll do
and
it
do
later.
other things. and we have things that were not previously done that the Board of Selectmen have recommended.
Right.
And there are things that individually we may have, or other boards or.
And then this leaves it up to the Board of Selectmen, how you get the names that you're gonna vote on.
Part of it is
As
the
you bring the board or any selectman
Well,
could bring
Karen,
a name forward. and then
think about it. I mean, that's a full-time position and the other two are part-time and then people are volunteering and then it's a clearinghouse.
But they come,
And
yes,
it doesn't matter. It can be that loose.
yep. And Pat?
I'd like to make a comment, and, you know, and I agree, it's probably for another discussion, because we are talking specifically about recommendations. But just in the sense of having the selectmen, the Board of Selectmen, you know, choose who's going to be on all boards and commissions in this town.
Appointed.
All appointed, have the ultimate say. It sits a little funny with me, only because our selectmen is a 3-member board. There's always a minority, there's always one person's a minority, and whoever is in office is typically, you know, the other selectman is of the same party. So I think it doesn't create the transparency. Now, I agree with, you know, with what you're saying, that for the most part, it has been done in a manner that's non-political. Like Dan, you had shared that, you know, anybody walks in your office, they say to you, regardless of party, that you make the recommendation and your decision based upon the merits of the applicant, let's call them, rather than party. But you can easily see where a party can control who is, you know, in what reflection of view maybe is reflected on our boards and commissions, and it's decided by 2 people. How you get around that?
Only
I
on
don't
the
know,
boards,
but I
not
think it's a point.
commissions are elected.
Well, yeah, they're appointed
Correct.
boards and
The appointed boards like.
But
the
it's,
board.
and frankly, it's hard to find people
I
to
was gonna
serve
say,
on
would we
boards.
have this problem?
so do.
We are rarely in a position where we say, oh, well, let's see, among these 10 people, which one shall we pick to?
The majority of
recommend.
elected and appointed boards are longer terms as well.
Right.
So they're all staggered, most of them. So it's, to change a whole board doesn't always happen, that he's an appointed board. The other thing, remember, there were minority representation rules in place in 2 different
And
places here. So
that's really where. it
that's
comes
the
down
check
to
and balance against somebody coming in and trying to clear house.
And it's
Right.
actually majority representation rules. So no one party can have more than
X
Yes,
number.
X number of
Right,
seats.
right. They call it
So,
minority representation. Sure.
They say it's minority,
every-
but it's not a guarantee to any party that they'll have any seats.
But even in a dual, if you're talking about the 2 major parties, they all know how that works and they usually don't recommend more than can be taken anyway.
Yep.
I think it's extremely rare when someone gets vindictive over this issue because we all want people that want to be there to serve the town of Bethel. It's very rare is all I can say. I wish we had so many people that it became a shooting, you know, just this kind of,
I understand. I just thought I brought that point up, because I
Good
think there's
point,
some
though.
validity to it.
no,
You know?
it's a really good point. But I think there's so much vetting in between the town committees of, you know, and the Board of Selectmen talking about it and everything.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot there.
I would point out just that the appointed boards and commissions are mostly advisory to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a natural fit for that board,
Yeah, they don't.
whether there's 3-member board, 5-member board, it's kind of a natural fit.
Yeah,
That's not a legal opinion. That's
That's
just.
Yeah,
really a
none
good
of the
point.
appointed boards really have a lot of power of any kind. They're all advisory boards.
Okay.
To the Board of Selectmen.
So if we're set on C7-5, we could move on then to C7-11. I think that's 11A. That was regarding the Public Utilities Commission. Let's see. Seven dash.
That's expanding it from 5 to 7.
But, yeah. And Karen, at the last meeting, Pointed out the whole issue about the three selectmen being on that board. And then perhaps the way to address that is simply to say 3 of the 7 members shall be board of selectmen members.
Yeah,
That's a really good idea, because if you
And
change
then
the number of the board
Change
of
the
selectmen.
number.
right.
it's-
There's a lot of places in here that we have to change language if we change the number of board of selectmen.
Right, but
We
here,
just saw where it said 2 must vote to appoint
Right,
somebody.
right.
Yeah.
And that's not gonna be
Yeah,
true
we
if we have 5. If
we should
change
just
it to
say majority.
Yeah.
majority. The,
And so here, if we're changing it to 7 members, do we, no matter how many board of selectmen we have, do we still want just 3 on here? Or do
well,
we-
they're proposing having 7, increasing it to 7,
Right.
having 4
So having-
electors
Right.
plus 3 of the select.
Yeah, that changes
3 of
the
which shall be
balance of
double,
power.
Well, it says so that's what we'd be changing.
would be from the board of
From,
selectmen.
yeah.
So,
The,
Then the question would
Would be-
come, how did those 3 get chosen?
Well,
Well,
but they're
before
appointed
that-
by the board of selectmen.
Board
But
of
the-
Selectmen.
The board of
So-
selectmen will sit around and say, who wants to be on this?
Right.
the,
But also consider that this says their term of the selectmen member shall run from the time that they take office. Well, does that mean if their term ends, they're automatically off this board and there's now a vacancy?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
So they
because
have
these
to-
are a 2-year term, but you might not have a selectman who's in office for 2 years by the time he's appointed.
if we change it to a 4-year term with a 5-member board of selectmen, it's gonna
It's
rotate.
gonna work out, yeah.
It's somehow they'll be able to get 3 people, even if it's a new person, which it may or may not be a bad thing, just getting a new person every
At
year.
any
Well, and they
given
could
point,
also, that outgoing selectman is now a regular elector and can be appointed back to the board anyway. To fill an elector position.
the rub I'll throw in there, somewhere, it says, I don't remember where, but the first selectman is the chair of the PUC. So it would reflect that it would be the first selectman and 2 other selectmen.
Got it.
so and where is that in
I
the
gotta find it.
charter?
It might be in the ordinance about, because remember, the PUC operates kind of as a enterprise fund somewhat separately. So somewhere in here, it spells out. that the first
So we
selectman
should
is the chair.
probably put that in here if that is what the ordinance says.
Well, first of all, you can say, 3 of which shall be from the
From.
board of selectmen, including the first selectman.
There you go, yeah. Okay.
So that would match the ordinance, but not handcuff you to change if for some reason you wanted someone different to be the first, or the chair of the PUC, other than the first select. And remember that charter is much harder to change than, say, ordinance.
You could say that the chair shall be appointed by the first selectman and then they can choose. So if
You
I-
don't have to
Joanne,
say it
every
because
other-
every board does that.
Every other board elects their chair.
Yeah, this is a little bit different though, with a lot of the state laws with respect to the public utilities. It's pretty clear that the CEO of the town is supposed to be there in that spot. I'd have to go through a whole.
But then that's enabling legislation. All you have to do is get them there.
Right, and to your point, what you said would totally fix it. If it ever went to a 5-member board of selectmen and you just said here,
First selectman.
first selectman plus
And
2
2
other
others, yeah.
selectmen, you're pretty good shape, because then the board of selectmen would decide who they're going to appoint to that board.
Right, but you'll always have the first selectman.
Right.
Because it will be spelled out exactly, which is not yet, not right now.
Yeah, you might just research this whole issue about the first selectman automatically being the chair. Because you don't, is that in some, yeah, if you can find that. If it is an ordinance or it is in state law, then we can put it in the charter. Otherwise, you can just kind of leave it silent.
So the Board of Selectmen shall appoint in accordance with the provisions of this charter, a Public Utilities Commission consisting of 7 members 3 of which shall be from the Board of Selectmen, including the
Including
first selectman.
Right.
Then it goes on.
Yep.
What is that?
It's high pitch.
Fire alarm, fire, panel again, it's going off.
I'm impressed.
I can't hear.
I'm not hearing anything. Wow.
I have bad ears.
Oh, shit. I'm the one wearing hearing aids.
Just barely.
What did he, but it sounds like
That might be in statute.
somebody's hearing aid going off on the other side. It's that high pitch.
Is it specific to?
If you get trouble silence, I'll shut it off.
Commission?
I think so.
It will.
Well, probably to the.
Did you hear that? Do you hear that? Am I the only one that hears?
No, I
this?
hear it.
I hear. it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There, now it's gone.
Um,
Thank you.
Are the other two selectmen appointed by the first selectman?
They're
We need to spell that.
appointed by C7-2A, so that appointed by the selectmen in accordance with section C7-2A would be.
All right, so
Thank you.
they're going to vote and appoint,
Just like regular appointed
yeah, okay.
boards and commissions.
Do we need to spell out the terms as the selectmen members shall run from the time that they take office and end when their selectman term ends?
Yeah, I think the only other thing is that it's not going to happen from the time they take office because they have to have a first meeting at which they will make appointments and figure out who's going to serve.
Yeah, because currently it's automatic that they serve because we only have
Right.
3.
Well, if you change it and at some point in time in the future, you get a 5-member board, then that take office language might not work.
It's
Yeah,
not
I think
mentioned.
Well, they're
I
gonna
think-
but they're gonna be on rotating.
Yeah, but what Tim's saying is mechanically they take office, you
But
won't
they're not
know at the
appointed
time they
yet.
take office who the Board of Selectmen is gonna appoint to be on the PUC. So
Right.
So we could
I
say
think
from
we
the
take
time of
that out.
appointment.
Yeah.
From the time of appointment by the Board of Selectmen.
I think we can just strike that sentence because that's implied.
Because when they're sworn in, their first meeting, they have to make an appointment.
No, but right now, they're sworn in, it would be okay because your 3 are automatically on.
Mhm.
So they're not getting appointed. They can serve automatically from the time they take office. If it were to change, for instance, to 5, they take office. And this language would assume that 3 automatically are on PUC from the time that they take office, but you don't know which
Which three.
3 those would be.
So they need to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Right, so currently it just happens automatically. The new language we're proposing to allow for more.
But it
selectmen.
says this, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint.
Those are the remaining 4 members. Those are the layperson members.
No, but I think the
No.
wording works.
In
The Board of
accordance with
Selectmen shall appoint in accordance with the provision of this charter, Public Utilities Commission consisting of
7 members.
7 members, 3 of which shall be from the Board of Selectmen. So they still need
They're
to,
already supposed to appoint.
they need to appoint them. So it's okay.
So we need to strike that sentence then that doesn't make sense. The terms of the selectmen members shall run from the time they take office.
Yeah.
That just goes out because it's implied.
The commission members shall serve, right.
Right.
So yeah, we can move that out.
Your term begins when you're appointed. And for the first selectman, that means you're now going to have an official, I appoint all 3 of us.
So hold on, let me just back up to the language.
So the
And we
board,
don't need the last sentence either. It says the remaining 4
So the
members
way it's
shall be
gonna read-
appointed by the selectmen.
the way it would read, Nick, is the Board of Selectmen shall appoint in accordance with the provisions of this charter, a Public Utilities Commission consisting of 7 members, 3 of which shall be from the Board of Selectmen, including the first selectman.
Yep.
The commission members shall serve a 2-year term. Strike the next sentence, and the remaining 4 members shall be appointed by the
No, I
selectmen.
think you get rid of the last sentence
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So listen up, how many jump in there, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
If you go look what they're talking about, section C-2A, it's telling the time of the term. It's basically the appointed boards serve their terms from the first Monday of January,
Right.
unless otherwise required by law or charter. Length of term shall be 2 years. Things in terms shall be as here, as specified. So it's basically reminding them that that's when the terms start.
Mhm.
Makes sense? That little piece about the remaining 4 members. So the Board of Selectmen serve while they're in, or
Yeah.
the members of
Right.
Selectmen. The remaining 4 serve starting the first Monday in January.
So there's a 1 month.
So
Yeah,
they
there.
will have had their Board of Selectmen meeting in December because they will have gotten sworn in November, had a Board of Selectmen meeting.
Yeah.
And most of the time, those Board of Selectmen meetings are all about appointment.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very good. When the appointed boards are always done in January, elected or in December. Elected take when they start.
Right, the
Yeah.
elected ones take office and then the other ones are.
Somewhere around here, there's only one that's weird. I wrote it down. So maybe look at it. I'll bring it back before the
But
end of our
then-
meetings.
but we still can't have the Board of Selectmen begin when they take office. They have to run January through 2 years.
No, actually, they would be on the PUC when they take office.
They-
So it's
they
when
Which,
take
they're
office-
elected.
let's suppose we have 5, which are the 5?
But they take office in
When they take
December.
office.
They take office.
We
in
got,
That's
we got a
what you're
1 month
saying.
gap that we've
At
got to deal
the
with.
first,
For
well,
now, it works now.
right now it works because at the first meeting of the year too, that's when they appoint acting first selectman. Right, they could easily appoint the PUC members.
Yeah.
But they have to appoint the acting first selectman. There's something else too, but
Nobody is gonna have a meeting of the public utilities the second half of December,
Right,
No.
not a
Right.
regular meeting.
right,
So you still have people serving.
right, right. Whoever was appointed January 2 years prior is still serving in that December.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right,
so
yeah, right.
we're not, we don't
Until
have a
December
vacancy.
5th.
Until
or
somebody
whatever.
else is appointed, because if there's an emergency or something.
Right, right. So this just means that you have to appoint your selectmen when you
Right
appoint
away.
the other members.
Yep.
So this needs to reflect that.
Dick, does this work?
So do you just want to capture this section
about
C
change
7-2A in
Wait.
that earlier sentence?
Yeah, where it says, the very first sentence says, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint in accordance with the provisions of this charter.
And
Just
you-
add section C 7-2A right
Does-
there.
does that
And then
do it?
strike the other sentence, yeah. It implies it now, but
And strike the terms, the sentence on the terms of the selectmen.
the terms of the selectmen shall run from the time,
Yeah.
strike that.
So the last 2 sentences.
And yeah, strike those last 2
The
sentences.
last 2 sentences come out.
So
So it's still a little bit ambiguous about the first selectman members. Are they serving a 2-year term on this board, or are they, like, if they're no longer the first
Yeah,
selectman?
they could
do
serve a
lose their
2-year
appointment?
term too.
shall run from the time
No.
they take office.
No,
No.
because if the Board of well, this is one of those things that I think would change if you have a 4-year Board of Selectmen.
That would change.
Yeah,
So the whole, there's no reason not to have all of them serve for 4 years.
It is worth mentioning, I mean, this doesn't have to be decided now. It can be tabled till the other things are decided.
And again, we're
I
just
think if
coming
we
to a
change the
consensus
first
here,
select-
so.
The selectman board to 4, if we change that to 4 years, there may be a lot of boards we need to look at and change from 2 to 4.
Right.
I,
I don't think
Actually,
there's
it's
a
only
lot.
one is the Board of Selectmen.
I think we can make.
And there's register of voters
oh,
and,
wait,
Well,
wait,
this
wait,
is-
wait, Nick started.
well, they're talking about
we-
all the other boards that have
Yeah,
2-year
I mean,
terms.
this- Operationally, a lot of things could maybe change this, whether we want to broaden it or leave some leeway. I would think we can take a consensus on the changes, including of the previous commission, plus a few cleanup changes from the Board of Selectmen, including the first selectman. And then pin it. I mean, I can go ahead and start drafting. I'll put
Yeah.
a comment in the margin. This may change, depends upon, we might have to revisit it. If you're changing the terms or changing the number of members on the Board of Selectmen, you might want to look. We're gonna have to finally
We're gonna
take a
look at a
final
lot
look
of
at
things,
everything,
but yeah.
but this may be one of them.
Would there be any advantage of having this particular commission be a 4-year term? Continuity,
That would not be my expertise. Let's,
Having served on the Public Utilities Commission, there are usually 3 or 4 people that really know about public utilities, and you don't want to ever lose them. You just kind of want to hang on to them
I
forever.
mean, you
So,
could just reappoint them, but
but if they resign, somebody else could be appointed too.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, they don't want to stay all 4 years. It's their life, but often there are 3 or 4 people I could think of that that's what they wanted to do for the town. And they were willing to stay as long as we would have them.
So I would say this, I mean, majority of our elected boards are 4 years because of what it takes to go through an election. That is why they do it. All of them are except for Board of Selectmen. Appointed boards, probably right to leave it a little more open to the Board of Selectmen for 2 years.
Mhm.
Because they're the ones making the decisions and you easily appoint, to your point, who gets to serve. You know, when I came in, I didn't look at party on appointed boards. I looked at who was there, who's done it, and who can serve. Because we need good people to serve. And to your point, the guys we have on the public utilities right now are amazing. In fact, they're aging out a little bit, probably won't want to stay much longer, but they know the business and that's what we look for. So having the
keeping
freedom to
this-
do that.
Yeah, and keeping this a 2-year term is fine, because even if your selectman, it gets changed to a 4-year term, maybe every 2 years, a different selectman might want to jump on this board anyway, so.
We do something like that.
It's your turn in the barrel. That's it.
So, just for point of clarification, we're talking specifically about, that length, but we're leaving open the terms of the selectmen
And the number.
and the number.
We're just adapting the language.
But I think there
That's a whole
needs to be a other level of discussion.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be a big
Yeah.
one.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to make any of these sections work with a 4-year, 5-member board of selectmen, because it's still gonna work with our current 2-year, 3-member.
Right.
We're not changing any language that's gonna affect that or preclude that or not work with that. Like, instead of saying 2 members must vote yes, you're saying the majority members must vote yes, and that works either way.
And just so I understand the process, what we're doing here is we're making suggestion on the language. We're not voting on it affirmatively until it is in front of us, obviously.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
there's
we're
no,
gonna get
but
another.
we are in
yeah,
a general
we're-
consensus.
we're trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
do general
but we're trying to
consensus.
Weed it out.
And what you're doing is you're kind of doing the overall look before you get into the weeds of where are the commas and where are the words.
Let's see if we can get a bulk done and
Yeah.
then work on the minutia,
That's my hope.
right? I
Yeah,
hope.
that's what I understand.
So if that works, then we could go on to the last thing we were looking at was 11-11 regarding meeting locations.
There's a strikeout at C8-9, is that something we're gonna look at as the Department of Public Works?
I think we done that last time. We
Okay.
did our, we
That's
just
not
pointed
what
out
we
the things that we tabled and
Okay.
wanted to come back to later.
Okay, C11 dash.
Just the next to last page.
Yeah, I'm even showing mine is showing up on the last page.
This last one.
Okay, yeah, Article 11 is lead.
So
That's
all,
last-
all regularly scheduled and or special meetings of the elected and appointed boards and commissions shall take place at the Clifford J. Hergen Municipal Center. And then they added, the previous Charter Vision Commission added, or a town-owned facility accessible to members of the public. And then they took out school facilities may be used because it's kind of included in the new language. And then it gives an exception for field site inspections. I guess those field site inspections are considered special meetings, right?
They do post an agenda and they do go out.
Are those the only commissions or boards that ever have a site inspection or a need to go off-site for a meeting? Like would the public utilities ever need to go tour? Okay.
So actually, it could be almost any board. The Board of Finance has been in the position where they've had to go do building tours. That's something we did in this past budget.
So maybe we
So
ended,
maybe delete,
yeah,
just say any board or commission.
exceptions may be made for site inspections made in the field, period.
And do we have to say maybe made? It's just this provision doesn't apply to site
Maybe for
inspections,
site
special meetings involving site inspections, off-site inspections.
Well, exceptions may be made for site inspections, period.
Yeah. Are we
It doesn't
limiting
say by
ourselves?
whom.
Is it only for
It's
site
an
inspections?
exception.
Well, any port, any
It
port.
says we have to be in a town, in the Clifford J. Urgent Municipal Center or a
Or any
town-owned
town-owned
building.
building.
Exceptions may be made for site inspections, period.
And
By
it's,
any
it's
board.
worth noting that that doesn't change any meeting notice requirements. Right. Anybody, if we say it's a board of selectmen or anybody, technically they can come, public can come wherever to go.
Oh, and they have on planning.
I
and
mean,
zoning
I guess the
stuff.
way I'm
Absolutely.
looking at it is that rather than saying exceptions may be made, just say that this does not apply to site inspections.
Same meaning.
Yeah, same,
Well,
same thing.
When I see an
It's just
exception,
one
then I'm
exception.
saying, okay, you're going to someone and asking for an exception. And then it's not clear who you're getting the
But
exception.
the
for.
preference is that they have it in
Oh, I
the
see what you mean.
buildings. You can't zoom a site inspection.
So
What-
if it
what
says
you're
an
saying is-
exception can be made, okay, who do I go to get the exception?
It's, the exception is implied. You don't have to go and ask somebody for it. But this could be interpreted that you do need to ask for an exception.
So if instead you just say, this does not apply to
To
site,
us- to
to
us.
special meetings involving a site, off-site inspection.
How would you word that?
I mean, even, and if there was if they were doing a construction,
Similarly to what Tim, you Clara. Would all special meetings cover everything we're thinking? Field inspections under these land use boards are special meetings. Are there other things that would not be special meetings that might fall under that do not apply?
Exception, though, the reason for exception is because you have to post it as a special meeting. That's why it's an exception. That's why you leave the word exception in, because it's not, you can't have a regular meeting outdoors. You have to have a special meeting outdoors. So it's an exception to the it says regularly scheduled and or special meeting.
Yeah.
But regularly scheduled meetings can't be off-site. It's a special meeting every time.
yeah, so you can say it does not apply to special meetings made in the field. So, I mean, in some cases, it may be an inspection of a construction site where maybe the owner of the property or the contractor doesn't want the public to come in.
Of dirt.
So,
Meeting
Especially
may be
always-
held off-site as needed for the business of the board or commission.
Are we getting into instances that we're not talking about regularly scheduled and or special meetings
Well, it could be a regular scheduled meeting
Planning board
off-site.
shall
of
take
elected and
place.
appointed boards?
I mean, aren't there just two things? You've got regular meetings and special meetings.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything else. Oh, illegal meetings.
Illegal
That's
meetings.
the other thing.
I mean, this isn't gonna apply to department agency meetings or things like that.
But that's why, why doesn't it work when you say, or town-owned facility acceptable to members of the public, exceptions may be made for site inspections, period.
I think that says it.
You don't have to name the boards.
Right, now, we're definitely not naming the boards. The question right now is the language and the word exceptions implying that you need to get approval somewhere for that exception.
And you do because you're posting. Because what always happens in our commission, it was planning and zoning, we would vote to have an off-site.
Right, but you don't have to go
Walk
ask
of this.
permission somewhere. You don't have to go to the board of selectmen and ask for permission to have this meeting.
It's an exception to this rule that you have to post it as a special meeting.
I'll,
Do you know what I mean?
I'll add it this way.
Absolutely, but I also see how someone could interpret it the way Tim is.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have this at all, and it's just here, right? Then what a board technically can do is not have a meeting, but they can go do a presentation that is outside of FOI. It's not if it's, so I can go out and have a presentation done for the Board of Selectmen. We'd all be there, and I can have anybody I want there as long as it's just a presentation. That's what you would have to call a site visit. That's what you would have to call going somewhere and looking at the school boiler, right? Having this in here And the exception actually encourages people to follow the
To be
rules
transparent, yeah.
and to say, we're gonna notice this, we're gonna have a special meeting or whatever it is, say, it's on the books. And I look at that, that's why this is here. And beyond just like having a meeting in a town building. This exception, I think, is very valuable, because it's making them notice these correctly and be transparent. Otherwise, you could call a presentation and FOI still protects you. It doesn't, not FOI. I've checked that out with FOI. So being broad there is okay, I think. As long as the people, like you said, are making a site inspection, and there's only a few places that do it.
Yeah, I don't think even assessment appeals does site inspection.
They go look at cars or something sometimes. They bring a car here for. I don't think they actually go look.
Are
at
they
the property.
bored? I
Yeah,
guess so.
I've heard that, but
So exceptions may be made for site inspections held off-site. That makes it clear that you're not in the building.
Well, that may be redundant, but I'll let legal clean it up.
I just think having it in here, it forces them to stay in notification requirements and being transparent.
But is your thinking keeping it to these, limited to these boards or changing the language to?
Lose the boards.
Yeah, lose the boards, because we don't want to hamper somebody that has another reason to do this.
I mean, I think if something is out of line, you see that. It's also not hard to kind of hold them, rein them in, hold them accountable. By the charter, the first selectman is administrator of the boards too. So like
And
Rob
actually,
said,
Like the fire commission might
Help
be
you.
good with a fire truck or something.
When you look at these,
There are
when
things-
when you look at what was deleted, they actually said school facilities may be used when the size and capacity of the meeting rooms are an issue.
Right.
Additionally, the Bethel Public Library meeting rooms can be used for convenience and overflow purposes. Exceptions may be made for site inspections. They deleted that, and I think it needs to stay in. But no, just the site, the
Well,
last sentence.
all those
the
things
I
rest-
we
think
talked
they,
about.
I think they took it out because
We
they
took it out.
added town-owned facility.
Yeah, because it was covered. The-
Got it.
The school,
Yeah, that's related to the previous sentence, not the,
But let me just throw in one other instance, and that is the Bethel Housing Authority. They meet up on housing authority property, but that's not town-owned property.
Do they post their do they notice their meetings?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, then this covers it. Exceptions may be made.
That's a question. Housing
That's for,
authority-
but that's not a site inspection. They're holding it up there for the convenience of the tenants up there.
right,
as
so they
well.
have a different, they have a
So-
different reason for being off of a town building.
I
It's
mean-
not a site inspection.
Unless you simply say,
Is
this
it,
does not apply to the Bethel Housing Authority,
I think
being less
a lot of
or,
arguments can be
or
made.
add in a town-owned property, comma, including the Bethel Housing Authority.
where do they fit under board or commission? Are they a board or commission? No, we're talking about boards and commission.
It is, this housing authority,
is a creature. It's
It's an appointed.
but it's also appointed by the town.
Yeah, they're appointed positions.
Yeah.
Are they an elected board or commission?
No, they are an appointed board.
Are they a
5-year
board
term.
or commission? They're a board?
They're an authority.
Yeah.
Authority.
That's
They're
different.
on the-
This,
they're-
wait, I'm talking, splitting
Yeah.
hairs. Special meetings of elected and appointed boards and commissions.
Yeah.
Are they a board and or commission?
The black letter, they're an authority, so I don't know. There's,
And it should be included. If they are board recognizing there's some level of appointment to that authority,
Yeah,
then it should be included in the language.
boards, commissions, and
I'd
authorities.
have to look it up to see what they actually are.
So they added a town-owned facility accessible to members of the public.
Or
You could say
public
comma,
subdivision.
including the Bethel Housing Authority.
is the meet, what's the meeting space like at the housing authority?
It's their common room.
Is it accessible to members of the public?
Oh, yeah. And
Oh, yeah,
I would
because
say
they're
we
all-
should,
Well,
we should
I
be
don't
saying
know out there
here,
if you live there.
physically accessible.
But
Right?
could I just walk in there and walk into their?
So they are a
conference?
commission?
It's
They're a commission.
for their meeting. Well, it is it's a housing authority, the housing authority,
Commission?
and they have a meeting. And they're considered commissioners.
The commission.
But when they have a meeting, it's open to the public and a lot of tenants show up. members of the public can show up.
Right, but are only tenants allowed in that building? Obviously
No,
not, because the
no.
commissioners are not tenants.
No, it's their office building,
So
which has a common room.
anyone can go.
Is it maintained by the town?
No,
There's no mandatory recording. Remember, that's not mandatory, it's up to each commission. So I don't think they tape it.
no, it's just,
They
it's a,
don't have the
they have minutes.
infrastructure. They have minutes. Yeah.
Tim, I think we can resolve this. Or a town-owned / sanctioned facility physically accessible to members of the public. That covers the authority because the town has, in effect, said you can have your meetings there. So the space it's approved by the town.
Who sanctions it?
That's the problem. is
Yeah.
you're
Well,
saying
who's sanct-
sanction.
At
You have to
some
spell out
point
who
in the past, God knows how long, somebody within the town said, it's okay for you to have meetings here. So precedent has been set for the housing authority to have their meetings, even though they're commissioned, to have their meetings at this other place. And it may not be owned by the town, but,
Remember the history behind this whole provision had to do with the police commission
right,
meeting behind their fortress.
Right.
And it ended up, the library and the housing authority kind of got into the weeds with that one too.
Mhm.
And I
So-
think the
Well-
library maybe continued to meet at the library and the housing authority continued to meet at the library.
How about exceptions may be made for site inspections and the housing authority?
So here's the thing that just hit me though. The housing authority is not included in the charter. Because it's an outside statute.
Yeah, it's a
Oh.
creature statute.
It's a creature statute that there are many things we appoint people to that are statute related that aren't necessarily a town board or commission.
So we don't
I
have
think
this right to tell them.
So
what
we
to do.
don't
I
need
think
to-
we have the right to tell them.
So we
And
don't
so
have
So we're
to-
back
Someone
to
in charge about that.
We're back
Well,
on
it's good to
exceptions
know.
may be made for site inspections.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but aren't they fall under the definition of a political subdivision?
No, they're not.
No.
That's, it's almost like it's whole separate entity that's governed by statutes. Everything they do is governed by the state statutes, even the appointment process, which we get to appoint. But there's a lot that they can do on their own.
Yeah, they must have their
And they
own
own the
federal
property.
ID number. They're
Yeah.
their own.
And I'm just saying that because I'm just reading quickly, water districts, park districts, things of that nature are political subdivisions.
But they're different. Like, for instance, the Regional Water Authority
I got that.
is a political subdivision.
It just,
It
just
operates
in my
that way.
mind, that maybe it falls under that category.
Yeah.
Why don't we, is there any other authorities similar to that?
But they are their own subdivision, not subdivision of us.
Okay. But I mean, is there any other authorities or, these commissions, boards, whatever term you're using that we should, if we're going to include the, housing authority in the language, are there others out there?
I don't
that
think
are
we,
also-
I think it's to the point we can't include the housing authority. I don't think we have any,
We don't have
maybe like
any
the
rights
regional
over
water
where-
authority, they're gonna get a regional water authority in Stony Hill, right?
Right.
When the Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority buys Aquarion, they're gonna create an Aquarion Regional Water Authority in Stony Hill will be part of it. We have no say over them. And they're almost like their own little municipality with the right to give them land. do
It's
whatever they
called
want.
quasi municipal.
Yeah.
Are they funded by the town?
No.
I'm just actually reading that. The authority is, this is their website. The authority is independent from the town of Bethel, is regulated by federal U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development
There you go.
and the Connecticut State Department of Housing. Administrative support comes from the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. We receive federal funds from HUD, Section 8, from Department of Agriculture's Rural Development Program, and state assistance from Connecticut Housing. They are
Autonomous.
autonomous. They are a separate, completely separate
Sure,
entity.
that sounds so.
Yeah,
They're
so
not-
we don't need to
So-
address them at all. That's
We
good.
don't have to, they got their own
It
world.
was easy.
Okay, so Tim, can I jump in? Because at the last meeting, we were talking about adding or a town-own facility, et cetera, or in-person / online at the discretion of the commission, which is what we have now with some of the commissions, specifically planning and zoning, which permits at least one member of planning and zoning to attend online. And others, should they wish to. So can we add that in there?
Is this the only
Otherwise-
section that addresses meetings, or is that online somewhere else in here?
I'm sorry,
Is this the only section that addresses meetings, or does it say somewhere else in here that every board can choose for themselves whether they want to be virtual or?
Not within.
Yeah, I don't
No,
think
this
it's
is it.
anywhere else.
Not within the.
Yeah, this is
I don't
it.
say that.
And I know we talked about the language of it, but it seems
No,
like
this
that
is-
needs to be inserted in.
yeah, no,
here.
this is the only place.
Is it in state law that allows some of the members of a commission or board to participate electronically?
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, we
stemmed
talked about
from the
that.
Executive order.
How about-
Second round of COVID.
Attendance online is permitted at the discretion of the individual commission
Or board.
or board.
Or do you want to say virtual
I mean,
/ hybrid
that's-
meetings?
that's
What is the
right
language
now.
in the state?
Hybrid is
Does the
just,
state call them hybrid meetings, virtual
It
meetings?
basically talks about using electronic communication for a person to, like, and we're talking a member of the board.
Yeah.
Member of the board can meet by electronic communication, I believe it's not written, right?
I believe so.
So that kind of is a span for everything that allows them to do that. They don't have to be present if something comes up.
Mhm.
That doesn't address the whole hybrid meeting stuff, which leaving it up to the chairs and the commissions themselves, I think is worthwhile.
Right.
Because you'll do the opposite. And remember, if you're doing it all hybrid, for some people, you're not getting the opportunity for them to come to a place.
Right, and that's different for each board.
right, you're
Yeah.
discouraging.
Every board.
Yeah.
Any board, you have it all hybrid, or they decide to have it hybrid.
Right.
Now, only people with computers can do this thing.
Right.
Right.
You have to have.
Well, hybrid implies in person and online,
You're right.
so
I think you
Well,
have
the hybrid
we
meeting,
originally
people
talked
can
about it
sit
when we
in
were talking about having it, the option to have it online only.
right.
You
Right.
can't.
Right,
No,
you can't do
that's
that.
not.
Although people can use the library. They still have to go in. there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I
so can
also
I,
suggest, hang on one second, Alice, can I also suggest we not use the word hybrid? Because it's so amorphous and nobody knows
Yeah.
what that means.
Right, and 20 years from now. they'll laugh
Right.
at us.
20 years from now, they'll be like, what?
You know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's like work from home. What does this mean, work from, that kind of
so
thing?
you can eliminate all of that by saying online attendance of a board or commission member is permitted at the discretion of the individual board or commission.
And I think you want to say electronic attendance.
Electronic.
Yeah,
Except,
electronic
Because somebody's
communication.
allowed.
It could be by phone. It could
Right.
be,
Yeah,
except there are commissions.
What about maps?
Or the what?
They get to, if you go to planning and zoning meetings and you see maps and you have to, we've changed it from here to here.
Yeah, but I mean.
I think the state law
well,
allows
then
you to
that,
participate by
that
phone.
board would say you
Okay.
can't do that.
And Alice,
Okay.
for years, well, when they didn't have online, when they didn't have things recorded visually, you sat down, you listened to the recording, and you based whatever information on whatever information Beth had.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
one other thing to be aware of. Certainly P and Z, I don't know about the other ones that permit it. P and Z allows participation from online attendees other than commission members.
Members of the
Yeah,
public.
members
it's
of the
like-
public.
Members of-
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's,
just include that in there. members of
that's
the public.
and that would be up to the board
Up
itself.
to the commit, right,
Yeah.
exactly. Right, the whole thing, in person / online, however you want to call it, is at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, Pat?
Is it my understanding that you're leaving it up to the sole discretion of the board committee to do it electronically because, just say, well, we're not gonna have any in-person meetings. I think that.
No, it's not
No,
hybrid.
no,
It's only if they're
no,
gonna
no,
do
no.
hybrid, allowing the public to.
The primary function should be in-person meeting,
Absolutely.
Yep.
This is giving the option
the
for
option.
people
The
to, if
alternative.
necessary,
Okay.
participate. Yeah, no,
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
no. I mean, that went out.
You still
Once
have to have
we
an
go out of
in-person meeting
COVID.
because the in-person meeting is gonna be where
Right.
Where does that say that here?
well, that's what we're talking about language that's gonna go in there. We don't have anything. We've got a blank page. It's not in the charter at all.
says that the meeting shall take place at.
Yeah.
Either here, in a municipal center, or a town-owned facility. Is the implication is that that's an in-person
Right.
meeting. I don't know how it would take place.
So then we can expand that
So
with the
be-
idea that
B, would that be B then?
commission members or board members may participate electronically in the
I'm
meeting.
just saying, why are we going to do something that's already in state law? I mean, it's, right?
Unless we were
I mean,
expanding upon.
sometimes you put it in there just so that
Yeah.
if people only go to, I mean, that's how we
We
got.
can be more restrictive usually. I mean, saying the same is a little redundant, but I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. I'm just
I
putting it
think
out
the
there.
idea was to make it clear that each board can make their own decision and that the charter or the board of selectmen was not mandating that you must have in person only. Or that you must have hybrid.
Or you can say electronic communication is consistent with the Connecticut general statutes, and then you never have to change.
Right.
Change.
Oh, now that I like a lot.
It's even better. So as the laws change, you don't have to change the charter.
Right. That's the key. I mean, you really want, sometimes it's less than more. If you don't want to say something, don't try to encourage something by saying something, because then you'll end up down the line.
Having to change it when they change it. So you have to
Yeah.
go back to a charter revision every single time the state changes.
Yeah, I like that.
Or worse, you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
function and
I caution that
Yeah.
only from the position of, better know what statute says. Before
He
we
just said,
adopt.
yeah,
it.
he did. He said it was.
Well, I know that it's lengthy, it's paragraphs upon paragraphs.
No, we can
Okay,
circulate.
You know, what the Connecticut general statute is.
Circulate that to the numbers.
Because there may be something that we want to be add to. We can't be more restrictive of statute. You can't delete
Right.
statute language.
I mean, that's something that each board chairperson needs to know as part of being the chairperson. They need to know that they have the option to do that, and they need to know what the state law is. And if they don't know, they need to ask somebody or look it up.
I believe I can find that pretty quick, but okay, we'll find it. I believe it's in Connecticut FOI rules, actually, the FOI law.
Yes.
So what, do we decide we need language for this or not?
Well, I'm saying that Nick is going to draft some language along these lines that make reference to Connecticut state law with regard to
Okay.
electronic participation.
I'm making it clear that each board has the right to decide for themselves whether they want to allow it or not. Or does the state say that you must allow it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't take away that power of the state.
Okay.
Provides it. So let's get the statute, and I'll draft some language along the lines of this discussion, and then you guys can go crazy with the language as much as you want.
I mean, because if it says you must allow electronic attendance, then we may have some boards that are not in compliance with that now.
It doesn't say that.
Okay.
It's not a must.
Okay.
That I know, but
Okay,
We'll,
hopefully
we'll
it's
find
a may, not a must. Okay, are there other reasons that a board may need to meet outside of one of our town buildings other than site inspections? Or do we want to make this a little generic? Like say exceptions may be made for off-site as necessary. So planning and zoning would say it's necessary for us to meet off-site for the site inspection. And fire commission might say it's necessary for us to meet off-site at
You don't
the,
believe it's
Fire
implied
truck
in the
thing.
language? Could be implied in the language, just nobody goes off site unless they need to.
right, but for a site inspection, that's a very specific thing.
Oh,
So I'm trying to make that word a little bit more broad, and I'm trying to think of other reasons, like the fire commission might need to go to the fire truck store and look at fire trucks.
that's a site inspection.
Okay, we're inspecting the site.
Sure. Because, no, it's, well, when
We
you
could
go on a
call it
site,
off-site inspection. How about that? You're supposed to be meeting inside a town-owned building, and you could do an off-site inspection.
You know, we could get rid of that exception word altogether by saying boards and commissions may meet off-site as necessary for business.
I like
is
that.
that you, then
That's-
you just sort of
Yeah.
statute.
Yeah.
Charter with that, because you remember you want it here where people know where it is and where it commonly says, okay.
Right.
As much as you can to a town-owned building. You just say off-site as much as you want.
Well, for necessary reasons, so they can't just decide to meet.
But I'm saying you're getting-
in Tower Park.
You're getting into this too open.
So you think keeping the word exceptions makes it clear that this is a rare thing that you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, because the board, yeah, you have to go back to the
And you're
chairman
also
and the
saying
chairman
for a
will put it on the
site
agenda
inspection.
and the board votes on it.
Very specific.
Right.
Because now it's, the onus is on the board to prove it's a site inspection.
Right.
If they don't, then you're gonna have somebody, the matter of the public, make an FOI, a FOIA complaint,
Right, right.
and say they didn't.
Illegal
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
Are we done? Because there's not much left here.
No, I think we've finished looking at everything and revisiting things that we tabled for a while informally. So I think we're set, and then we would move on in the next meeting to the recommendations of the Board of Selectmen.
That's excellent.
And then beyond that, again, we look at other proposals that came before the Charter Revision Commission or from members themselves.
Sounds like a plan.
And then we'll invite the Board of Finance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one point of order, I think we missed some correspondence. Did we talk about the Conservation Commission letter?
No, we didn't talk, we received the
You
correspondence.
did say it was received.
Yes,
Perfect. I missed it. Thank you.
When's our next meeting?
October 9th,
October 9th.
in the GP room.
Really?
This room wasn't available.
I think we have a couple coming up in the GP.
Is that the big room, the gym?
Mary,
Yeah.
should I tell you?
Yeah,
Jonathan?
the old gym, the one with the stage.
We don't want to go upstairs?
They were all booked.
No, everything's booked.
Or
Maybe we have to go on a site visit.
including P and Z?
Yeah.
We're just looking for comfortable chairs, man.
Well, it's A, B, and D. And after that, you're in the GP room.
Then we can go off-site.
To BYOC,
Yeah.
stop here first and bring your own chair.
Oh.
Do we have to make a motion to adjourn?
I was going.
We do have to make a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I seconded it.
Okay.
Anyway.
All in favor?
Aye.
9:12. And yeah, that's about how much time. Yeah, that.
After
We're
a long
losing
day
it.
of work, yeah, I just all of a sudden realized I felt done.